We got the new god of the Marvel Universe. The season finale for What If. Hey.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel What If Season 3, Episode 8 finale video. That's right, this is the end of the series. It has been canceled. Maybe they'll bring it back in
Sadly.
several years
Yeah,
in a
hopefully
different
they
form
do,
once they've introduced
because
more X-Men, Fantastic
there's
Four,
a lot
big
of stuff
characters,
you
so
could
they can
do.
do way bigger episodes with way bigger characters. But they did try to end with a bang, basically minting a bunch of new gods in the Marvel Universe and a bigger god in an even higher sense. There are a bunch of lowercase g gods in the MCU, like Thor, for instance, Zeus, the other pantheon that we saw in Thor Love and Thunder, but there's really only one capital G god, and they got pretty close to actually minting a brand new one in this episode. They also brought back Kit Harington's Black Knight character from the Eternals. That's right, we got like our first Black Knight cameo scene since that
Black
Eternals post-credit scene.
Knights.
But the funny thing about that is that you can't really say that they followed up on the post-credit scene. Like, it's still one of the lost Marvel post-credit scenes that just goes nowhere right now. Because the version that we saw in the episode was actually in a completely different universe. It wasn't meant to be the one we saw in the MCU Eternals movie. Jon Snow, Kit Harington, Black Knight still knows nothing. There was even a version of Captain Carter who became the Black Knight in
Yeah,
another
that was pretty
universe.
cool
So
how
I'll
they were
talk about all
showing
the
their
different versions that they
different
revealed at the end of the episode.
versions.
Because like there's a version of Kahori who became Apocalypse, a version of Captain Carter who also became Wolverine. They really wanted to go out with a
It's
bang with
pretty
some of their
tough.
Easter eggs in the episode. There was also a really big Deadpool cameo scene. We finally got some more Spider-Man. So there were like a whole bunch of cameos that they baked into this
Spider-Man,
because it was their last big episode. They wanted to go out with a
Ghost
bang.
Rider.
So we'll break it all down. And what happened with everybody in the episode getting all these
That
cosmic
was
powers
pretty
being
cool.
turned into essentially gods for a brief period. And what happened to Captain Carter, who seemed like she actually turned into a much more powerful god. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're still getting those Spider-Man episodes in a few weeks, and we have Daredevil Born Again episodes after that. I'll
Oof.
be doing videos for all that
Damn.
stuff too. But the
Marvel
episode
coming
title
in
was just
hot next
What
year.
If, which is meant to be a reference to the entire premise of the
That's
series,
what's
the
up, though.
question that the watcher asks at the beginning of each episode, and what the Eminence asked last week. What if the
Yeah, the
watcher
Hope
interfered?
Doctor
What would
Strange.
ultimately happen?
That
Like,
would
what
cook.
if they actually did all this stuff? Which is also how they end the episode too. One of the other big changes to this week's episode, to the actual intro, is
The
that they actually do
Squirrel
the
Cat.
intro at the very end of the
That's pretty
episode.
cool.
Probably the biggest question first, did Captain Carter turn into the new god of the Marvel Universe or the Marvel Multiverse? Because it did
Maybe,
seem
maybe
like she
not.
turned into everything, like she had the story backdrop in her, kind of like Eternity does inside the MCU or like the other universes.
I
But there's
think we'll
already an
see her
eternity
eventually
in the
again.
universe where they were because it was Strange Supreme's universe. And the other big twist is they explain when he sacrificed himself to reboot his universe at the end of season 2, he became the eternity of that universe. That's why when they show you Strange Supreme, the outline of him looks like the starry sky, like you see the universe inside his outline. That's meant to be the way they depict the Eternity character in the
Okay.
comics, like it looks like his entire body is the universe itself. There is meant to be a living embodiment of the entire multiverse itself. It kind of seems like that's what happened to her. In the comics, that's called the firmament. Like in the current Marvel comics, they're in the middle of the 8th firmament, so it's like the 8th version of that character.
My
The 8th
question
version of
is,
the
do
multiverse.
all her
So
different
that's kind of what the
versions
Watcher is
erase
talking
now
about at the
too?
end of the episode, where he says, it sucks that she died, but it feels like she's watching us somewhere, like someone is watching me, like a
Yeah.
higher level being is now watching me, and that is basically Captain Carter. That's what happened to her. Basically making her like the new most powerful character in the entire MCU multiverse itself, like not just the one single MCU of like the movies and the TV shows. They actually got into some power scaling during the episode. I know people are always curious about like who is the most powerful Marvel character at any given time. There was a little bit of that going on in the episode where they actually explained that. The only being who's more powerful than the firmament, like the living embodiment of the multiverse, is called the One Above All, and he's meant to be the actual capital G god of the entire of Marvel Comics.
And they
One of the
introduce him
ideas
in
with
the
his
movie.
character, though, is that he's so powerful that you like never see him usually in stories, just because he throws the power scaling way off. Like it wouldn't make sense if there was a character that powerful in the story. So he does exist. He has shown up before, but very, very rarely. And I know there's going to be a bunch of questions about all the exiles after the episode. Like, are they going to keep all their cosmic powers? Like, are these going to be super OP? I do
I
not
think
think
they
they're going to let
would.
them keep those powers. Like, they'll just go back to being normal exiles, saving the multiverse from basic threats day to day. Just starting at the beginning of the episode, though, the Marvel Animation logo is the same, but they actually start with a flashback to show you Uatu becoming the Watcher for the first time,
The
like he's taking
beginning,
his oath for the first time and getting his cosmic level power. All these lines
before
here
he
are meant to be the
betrays
sum
them.
total of all reality, all timelines branching out. They visualize it kind of like the end of Loki Season 1 in Kang's base here, and the end of Loki Season 2 with his multiverse tree. All because in the comics, the Watcher's home that they stay at here on the fifth dimension is meant to be the apex of all reality, so they can see all of time and space and manipulate it in like a 3D kind of way. That's why it looks just like it did during the Interstellar movie, because they visualize time and space in a 3D kind of way. The follow-up question to that, why do they get their powers turned off when they're inside Strange Supreme's universe? The power scaling that I talked about, they clarify in the episode, when they're inside a particular universe, the version of eternity in that universe can manipulate reality at will and basically becomes the most powerful character, except for when the Watchers are still in the higher fifth dimension, or like God Loki is tending his multiverse tree also in the fifth dimension. In those places, they would then be more powerful than Strange Supreme as
Mm,
eternity in his universe. The Eminence
they
basically
couldn't do
explains
anything
how to be a
once they got
Watcher
there.
to the Watcher and take his oath so that he gets his powers. When he says the Watchers have to sacrifice their own names, this one is the main Watcher of the comics. His name is Uatu, as he says later in the episode. Then he says, what if he's not good enough for the job? He says the name of the thing inside the thing, like they say the what if phrase a couple of times during the episode. Explains their highest law, give up everything, basically become a monk, and only observe things in pursuit of upholding the natural order of things, never interfering. As he takes the oath, he gains his powers and the observational plane, his multiverse base. There are a couple of shards they show with clips from previous episodes, mostly from season 1 episodes, like Doctor Strange before he became Strange Supreme, Loki, the Hydra Stomper Steve Rogers from season 1, episode 1, Captain Carter, of course. All to set up the twist right after this with the cut to where they've captured them and they're holding them on trial. His second task that he gives to him is also to understand the entire reason behind existence and reality over billions of years, like just come to the realization for why everything exists. Which they also try to pay off with the speech that he gives the Eminence at the end of the episode when he becomes the Watcher of Strange Supreme's universe. They set up the joke where he says he will never fail him and then cut to him saying exactly that. You have failed me. How dare you?
Mm,
It's a little bit like that joke, you had one
you
job, like
thought,
everybody looking
buddy.
at Loki from Thor Ragnarok, you had one job to do. Then they reference a bunch of
Just
times,
the
not
one.
every time, but a bunch of times he's interfered. Stephen Strange is meant to be the Strange Supreme from season 1 and season 2. Remember, he sacrificed himself to basically restart his universe and became the eternity of his universe, which is a big plot point at the end of the episode. The Watcher tries to justify his interference, saying that it actually led to the creation of new timelines and new realities for them to watch, growing reality ultimately instead of
But is
shrinking
that a
reality.
good thing or
All the
bad thing?
metaphors
I
of
think it's
gardening and the
bad
tree are meant to be references to Loki's
to them,
multiverse
at
tree.
least.
Riri Williams is from the recent episode. I already did a video for that earlier this season. She turned herself into the new Vision. Kwai Jun Fan is the boy that he helped in the recent Shang-Chi episode. He's a reference to Iron Fist from the comics in the late 1800s. He is a canon character. Jun Fan is also meant to be Bruce Lee's birth name, so they're kind of doing both an Easter egg for comic book, older, ancient Iron Fist, but in the comics themselves, that character was also an Easter egg for the real-life Bruce Lee. So it's sort of like an Easter egg for an Easter egg. It was
Mm,
basically the Marvel comic book writer saying,
Bruce
what if Bruce
Lee.
Lee became one of the previous versions of Iron Fist? If you're not familiar with the actual Iron Fist origin story,
That'd be
like how he
cool.
got created in the comics, he was created based on real-life Bruce Lee. The creators talked about naming him Iron Fist because they had just watched a Bruce Lee movie, Fists of Fury, and during it, they had something called the Ceremony of the Iron Fist. At the time, during the big Kung Fu craze, Bruce Lee around the world was known to have iron fists because of the way he trained, thus they named this brand new character that they created Iron Fist. When he mentions interfering to save Reed Richards, it's not clear which version of Reed
I
Richards
wish
or
they would
which
have showed
Fantastic
that
Four
though.
team he saved. He mentions Nick Fury, but he doesn't say which one. There have been many different Nick Furies from different universes in previous
But he
episodes.
did a lot
Then
more
he
than
even
what we know
mentions
of.
Madison from She-Hulk. When he says how she spells her name in that weird way, that's actually a line of dialogue that Madison had during She-Hulk. He says his most dangerous intervention has been Captain Carter, showing that they've captured her too. I think this is also to set
They
the
have
twist
both
at
of
the end
them
of
on
the episode where she
lockdown.
basically becomes the entire multiverse. The Eminence says that they're basically going to break all their rules in order to try and uphold all their rules, which is meant to be a very ironic statement. Like, the rules are important, but we're not going to listen to the rules right now for a second. Then the new god
He
form of
broke the
Ultron
oath.
shows up, isn't able to
Bro,
kill
that was
them,
a
but does slow them
badass.
down for a little bit with his new cosmic level power. They escape with the Exiles, and he winds up sacrificing himself to basically hold
They
them
were
back
too much for him,
briefly,
though.
even though it doesn't really work. When they visualize them traveling through dimensions, it's mostly meant to be a reference to 2001 Space Odyssey, with the main character traveling through dimensions evolving into a higher being.
That must have
Then
felt
the Eminence
crazy.
basically wastes Ultron like it doesn't even phase him, and because they have
Too
control
easy.
over all reality, time, and space to a very fine degree, they basically stop the Exiles in their tracks and just Batman themselves into their ship. This is where they try to get the help of Strange Supreme, who's become Eternity in his universe, hoping that he'll be able to control them once they're inside his universe. But they don't quite make it there before the other Watchers basically down them on the planet here. Their whole battle on the planet here feels like it has vibes of the classic 1980s Secret Wars 2, like big giant moon battle on a planet with them just going at each other with cosmic
Yeah, it was
power.
pretty
We will probably see a version of this
badass.
during the live-action Avengers 6 Secret Wars movie. Their first big attempt is really just to set up the
They were
twist
getting
with them
cooked at
becoming
first, though.
Watchers themselves and getting cosmic power. Like, they can barely touch them without getting the cosmic upgrades. I think the way they're explaining this logically is that not just that any character anywhere in any universe could just walk and say the same exact words and get the same exact cosmic power. One of the Watchers has to be doing this ceremony with them, and it's basically granting them a portion of their power, like sharing their cosmic power with them. Some of you also might have
It wasn't
detected
for
the
that, they
sly
would have
reference
been
during
done
this too.
for.
The twist here with them taking the oath, getting all the power, and saving their lives is meant to be a reference to Haley Atwell's character in the Mission Impossible movies. At the end of the recent movie, she basically does the exact same thing, saving her life from Kittredge by basically joining the IMF organization and taking the oath that Tom Cruise works for in those movies. But they all basically get cosmic powers, cosmic armor
God
upgrades,
tier
and cosmic weapon
Avengers.
upgrades too. Notice that all their armor also have celestial symbols all over it. He says his name from the comics, Uatu. They continue their fight, and it's a much more even fight this time. There's obviously a lot of hand waving going on here because it's like a 25-minute episode, so they're like, we don't have time to fully
That was a
explain all
pretty
this
long
stuff. They
fight,
get all these
though.
cosmic powers, then they beat the hell out of them.
I
Typical
like it.
half-hour animation logic. There are a couple Easter eggs during their fight too, like one of the Watchers tries to pull the same trick that Infinity Ultron did during Season 1, eating the entire galaxy, but Kaori stops him before he can do it. The planet blowing up here too feels like another Emergence reference from the Eternals with the Celestials this season.
Too much
They actually have
power
a
in
couple
that
references to
thing.
the Emergence throughout the season, just more Eternal stuff in general.
There's too
The
much
Watu
going
stops
on.
them from killing the other Watchers. Notice the gauntlets they have on them also look a little bit like the Infinity Gauntlets too. Feels like a little more Easter eggs here. Then the three Watchers combine their powers, claiming they're going to wipe all of them from existence in
Three
every
become
reality,
one.
every timeline, everything they've ever done. Kang has referenced doing stuff like this in the past, and the Loki series referenced this a couple times too, like the TVA has this ability. As they start doing it though, you notice that all the color starts to bleed out of the frame to black and white, as if all of
was working,
reality for
too.
these characters is being erased. During this scene, there were a whole bunch of Easter eggs for alternate versions of huge characters in the comics.
that was a
So there's a
pretty,
version of Storm who
badass
became
part.
Black Panther. Obviously, big relationship with Black Panther in the comics, so riff on that. We will probably see them together in live action eventually, once they
That'll be
introduce a
cool.
brand new T'Challa Black Panther. There's a birdie who became Archangel from the X-Men, one who became Nova, and one that became more of an actual duck, like Howard the Duck comics. Some of the Kahori ones went a little bit harder, though. There's a Kahori who became
Bro, I'm a big
Apocalypse,
fan of her.
one
I
who
ain't gonna
became more of
lie.
a straight-up Native American warrior without powers, one who became Captain America. Notice her suit has wings too, kind of like Sam Wilson's Captain America wingsuit. The purple hair and the robe here looks like a version who became Agatha Harkness in a universe, and then there's just another version who joined the X-Men.
X-Men.
There's the Captain Carter who became the Black Knight, another version who became Sabretooth. That one goes real hard. Another
Yeah.
version that became Wolverine. Obviously, if you're going to do Sabretooth, you're going to make her Wolverine too. A version who became Elektra in a more comic book accurate suit. A version who became Deathlock, super deep cut. They did him on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And a version who got the powers of Thor, wielding his hammer and his armor. Captain Carter's able to use her new cosmic power to counteract their effects long enough to sacrifice herself and stop them. But like I said, for a second, it looks like she turns into the multiverse itself, like she becomes pure space and
Doing
time.
God
And even though she
mode.
seems like she dies sacrificing herself, all the references the Watcher makes to being watched by someone else, like there's always somebody out there watching, and that person now is meant to be Captain
But
Carter
I
in
want
this
to
new
know, how
form
did
that she's
she
taken, like this
send
new
them to
multiverse
the
form.
Doctor Strange
But because her
universe?
cosmic version of the shield still exists, it means that all the other Captain Carters out there in the multiverse still exist. Like she
Okay.
didn't get wiped from existence or anything like that. Also revealing she was able to, while that was happening, push them the rest of the way into Strange Supreme's universe, where he is eternity and he could basically nullify all the powers of the Watchers. I already
If
explained
it
how the
wasn't
power
for that,
scaling works here. So, like, while they're in
they would
his
have just
universe,
took them
Strange
out again.
Supreme as eternity is the most powerful being. But when the Watchers leave that universe, they're more powerful than him. God Loki would also be about the same power level as the Watchers, too, as like a fifth dimensional being now. Then Uatu spares the Eminence and the others, and them sitting on the moon here having the little chat looking at the planet here is also meant to be a reference to the comic book Watcher Uatu, whose base is on the blue side of the moon, where he sits and watches the main 616 universe all the time in the comics. Maybe we'll see a live-action version of him or a reference to him during the Fantastic Four movie. Then he tells the Eminence to become the Watcher of Strange Supreme's universe and does a version of the intro as the outro. When he ponders if there's life after death, we actually know the answer to that because they got into that during Moon Knight. For regular beings, like lower level beings, their consciousness just travels to another dimension based on their belief system or if they have a contract with a specific god. When it comes to higher level cosmic beings, though, especially ones that are abstract entities, for example, you can't really kill ideas. Like, you can't kill Mistress Death, you can't kill Death, you can only trap her. Then he does a slight twist on the intros with the outro and a whole bunch of cameo scenes. They start with the six-arm version of Spider-Man from that era in the comics. That's also where Morbius came from too, so I'm surprised they didn't try to reference that during the Morbius movie. A version of Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, who's a samurai warrior, a version of Riri Williams, who became the
Bro, if we
Punisher,
would have got some
Gamora,
of
who
those,
I guess got
it would have been
married
even
to her
better.
Star-Lord, like she's in a wedding dress, it looks like. This
Mm.
is a version of Blade, who became the next Moon Knight. We'll actually see a version of him during the Marvel Zombies TV show, but this is what his Moon Knight suit looks like during that. Then there's a Thanos who became Weapon X Wolverine. That's totally
Bruh,
wild. Like,
that
where's
would be
that episode? I would
crazy.
love to see an episode based on that guy. This is a version of Kingo who became Iron Man in his universe, wearing an Eternal Celestial
Of
version
course
of
he
an Iron
did.
Man suit. It actually looks a little bit like the Eternals costumes in the comics, too. This is a version of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, who also became the Wasp. A version of Hulk who became
That's
Sorcerer
what I want to
Supreme
see
in his
right there.
universe, but the white beard also kind of makes him look like the Maestro, like Maestro Hulk who became Doctor Strange. Howard the Duck, who became Scarlet Witch, we actually saw this character during the end of Season 2 in Strange Supreme's lair. This was like a dragon or a dinosaur who became Hawkeye, like a universe where dinosaurs evolved and all the Avengers characters are dinosaurs or dragons like this. This is Jubilee from X-Men 97, who became the Herald of Galactus, Silver Surfer in her universe. This seems like a Skrull who took over Captain America's life and then had a version of Infinity War in his universe because he has the Black Panther shields on his arms. This is the actual Dane Whitman Black Knight dancing with Cersei from the Eternals, the only Black Knight cameo scene, like I've said, we've gotten since that Eternals post-credit scene. I've already talked extensively about what Marvel was planning for that character and how that's all changed. Like, a lot of the stuff they were going to do with him got canceled. This is meant to be a more comic book accurate version of Deadpool, Maximum Effort. This looks like a young version of Hela with Thor's hammer and graffiti on it
Hela.
because she did wield Thor's hammer in the MCU before Thor did, before it had the enchantment on it. The
Mm.
graffiti on it also feels like a joke
Not
about it not
worthy.
having the enchantment on it. I think this is meant to be a Shang-Chi who became Star-Lord and also got the 10 rings. There's a
That
Wild
would have been
West version
crazy
of
too.
Loki with horns, a hat, and a six-shooter. This character with the crown and the white here is actually a version of Scarlet Witch, but from the Marvel versus DC crossover comics. For those of you that
Mm.
want to see them do a project like that in the future, like a Marvel versus
That
DC
would be
movie,
crazy.
in those they actually combined characters from Marvel and DC into one
Well,
single
since
character.
Jen
They
comes
called
and
her
over
the
there
White
now,
Witch.
they might.
This person at the end is kind of blurry, but seems like a Dormammu reference who turned good. But let me know if you think this is somebody else. Then, unlike the previous episodes, they don't have any special scenes from the episode itself over the actual credits. But like I said, this is basically the end of the What If show. When it comes back, it'll be like a different form in several years after they introduce more X-Men, Fantastic Four characters, and they can do way more stuff with them because they've already done the twist in live action. But if there's any other Easter eggs or references during the episode you spotted that I
Yeah,
didn't talk
that was
about in the
pretty
video,
good.
write them below in the
What
comments.
they
And big
had.
reminder that Spider-Man episodes are going to happen in a few weeks. I'll be doing videos for that. The Daredevil Born Again episodes will start after that. So there'll be a bunch
When
of
is
stuff happening
Daredevil?
in the next couple
February?
months. Be sure to enable
Or
alerts for my
January?
channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. Everybody click here for my Daredevil
But
Born Again
thanks for
trailer video.
watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.